Last fall, I pulled just over 112 pounds of potatoes out of a single 3-foot wide growing tower that started with one $3 bag of sprouted potatoes from the grocery store clearance shelf. Meanwhile, my neighbor planted a 40-foot row in his tilled garden bed, watered it all summer, fought potato beetles for weeks, and harvested maybe 35 pounds. Same season, same zone, completely different result. The discovery happened almost by accident. I had a bag of organic Yukon Golds that had sprouted in my pantry, and instead of tossing them, I started experimenting with vertical hilling using research I'd come across from Cornell Cooperative Extension on indeterminate potato varieties. What I learned that season completely reset how I think about growing food from kitchen scraps. So today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to turn one bag of sprouted grocery store potatoes into 100 pounds of food this year, using a method that takes up about as much space as a kitchen table. And stay with me to the end, because I'll share one tiny scrap gardening trick that doubled my yield in the final month, and almost nobody talks about it. Now, before we get into it, I have to be honest with you. I did this the wrong way for almost 15 years. I was the gardener tilling up long rows, planting seed potatoes 4 inches deep, hilling them once or twice, and feeling pretty proud of my 40 or 50 pound harvest. If that's where you are right now, you are not doing anything wrong. I was right there with you. I thought buying certified seed potatoes from the catalog every spring was the only legitimate way to grow them. Then I started experimenting with sprouted kitchen potatoes in a vertical setup, and the yield difference in my first season was so dramatic I thought I had miscounted. Here's what I learned that changed everything. Potatoes are what we call indeterminate stem tuber producers, which means certain varieties will keep forming new potatoes all the way up the buried stem as long as you keep covering that stem with soil or mulch. Research from Cornell and from Washington State University shows that varieties like Yukon Gold, Russet Burbank, German Butterball, and most fingerlings will produce tubers along 18 to 24 inches of buried stem if given the chance. A traditional flat row only gives the plant about 6 inches of stem to work with. A vertical tower gives it 3 or 4 times that. That's the entire secret. Once you understand that, the 100-pound yield from a $3 bag stops sounding like a miracle and starts sounding like simple math. All right, let me show you exactly how to do this, start to finish. The first thing you need to do is pick the right potatoes from the grocery store. This matters more than people realize. You want organic potatoes because conventional supermarket potatoes are usually sprayed with a sprout inhibitor called chlorpropham, and they will fight you the entire season. Look in the organic section for Yukon Gold, red potatoes, or fingerlings that already have small purple or white sprouts forming, what gardeners call eyes. A $3 bag will typically give you 8 to 12 usable potatoes. Avoid russets from the regular shelf. Avoid anything that looks waxy and shiny, and absolutely avoid potatoes that feel soft or smell sour. You want firm potatoes with active eyes. That's your free seed stock. Now, here's where most people go wrong. They take that whole potato and plant it in the ground. What I've found works much better is a process called chitting, then cutting. Set your potatoes in an egg carton, eyes facing up, in a bright windowsill at about 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 to 14 days. The sprouts will thicken from thin white threads into stubby green nubs about ½ an inch long. Those stubby green sprouts are what you want because they grow into strong stems instead of weak, leggy ones. Once they're chitted, cut any potato larger than a chicken egg into 2-inch chunks, making sure each chunk has at least 2 healthy eyes. Let the cut pieces sit on a paper towel for 2 full days so the cut surface is callus over. That callusing prevents rot once they hit the soil. Now let me show you the tower itself, because this is where the yield multiplication really happens. You can build this with a simple roll of welded wire fencing, the kind with 2x4-inch openings, cut to a length of about 10 feet, and rolled into a cylinder roughly 3 feet across and 3 feet tall. Line the inside with cardboard or untreated burlap to hold soil in. Set it directly on bare ground or grass in a spot that gets at least 6 hours of direct sun. If you're in zones 3 through 5, wait until 2 weeks after your last frost date. If you're in zones 6 through 9, you can plant as early as 3 to 4 weeks before your last frost, since potatoes tolerate light frost on the soil surface. Fill the bottom 6 inches of the tower with a 50-50 mix of compost and straw or shredded leaves. Don't use pure garden soil. It compacts and suffocates the developing tubers. On top of that base layer, place your calloused potato chunks in a circle, sprout side up, spacing them about 8 inches apart around the perimeter and 1 or 2 in the middle. For a 3-foot tower, you'll fit 8 to 10 chunks. Cover them with another 4 inches of that compost and straw mix and water until it feels like a wrung-out sponge. Before we get into the hilling sequence, which is honestly the part that does most of the heavy lifting on your yield, I want to pause for just a second. What I'm sharing with you today is one piece of a much bigger picture. If you're enjoying this and you want to take scrap gardening further, I put together a complete guide called the 30-Day Kitchen Scrap Garden Protocol. It walks you through 31 different crops you can regrow from kitchen scraps, including a full $10 starter kit guide, zero waste kitchen strategies, and a complete troubleshooting section for when things don't go right. It's 171 pages, and you can grab it for $17 by scanning the QR code on your screen or clicking the link in the description below. It's at backyardbuddybooks.com. All right, let's keep going because the next part is where the real magic happens. Once your sprouts grow to about 8 to 10 inches above the current surface level, it's time to hill. This is the single most important action in the entire process, and you'll repeat it 3 or 4 times over the season. Add another 4 to 6 inches of your compost and straw mix, burying the lower 2/3 of those green stems and leaving just the top 3 or 4 inches of leaves exposed. Every inch of stem you bury becomes new tuber-producing real estate. The plant responds by sending out lateral stems called stolons from those buried nodes, and each stolon forms a new potato. Repeat this hilling every 2 to 3 weeks as the plants grow. By the end of June in most zones, your tower should be filled all the way to the top with about 24 inches of buried productive stem. The conventional approach is to hill once or twice with garden soil and call it done. What I've found works better is hilling 4 times with that light compost and straw mix because the loose texture lets tubers expand without resistance, and you can practically see the difference at harvest. My first tower using soil only gave me about 40 pounds. My second tower using the loose compost and straw method gave me 96 pounds from the same number of seed pieces. Watering matters too. Potatoes need about 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week, and a vertical tower dries out faster than a row bed because of all that exposed surface area. Stick your finger 4 inches into the side of the tower. If it comes out dry, water deeply until you see moisture seeping from the bottom. In zones 7 and warmer, you may need to water every 3 days during July and August. In cooler zones, twice a week is usually plenty. Around 80 to 90 days after planting, you'll see the foliage start to yellow and flop over. That's the plant telling you the tubers below have hit full size and the skins are setting. Stop watering completely for 10 to 14 days. This skin setting period is what gives you potatoes that will actually store for months instead of weeks. Then comes the best part. Cut the wire, peel away the cardboard, and just let the whole tower collapse onto a tarp. You'll be digging potatoes out of every single layer, top to bottom. My last harvest gave me 112 pounds from 8 original chunks of sprouted grocery store Yukon Gold. That's the math working in your favor. Now let me cover a few common patterns I see, because these are the mistakes I made for years. The first pattern is using regular garden soil to fill the tower. It compacts, it holds too much water, and tubers struggle to expand. The compost and straw mix breathes, drains, and stays loose. Switch to that, and your yields will jump. The second pattern is hilling too late. Folks wait until the plants are 18 inches tall, and by then the lower stem has already toughened up and won't produce new stolons. Hill, when shoots are 8 to 10 inches, while that stem tissue is still soft and willing to convert. The third pattern is overwatering early. New potato plantings need very little water until they're actively growing. Soggy soil rots your seed pieces before they ever sprout. Keep it lightly moist for the first 3 weeks, then increase as the foliage fills in. And the fourth pattern is harvesting too early because you're excited. I've done this. You dig in at 60 days, find a few small new potatoes, and feel proud. But you've cut your yield in half. Wait for that yellowing foliage. Patience is the cheapest fertilizer there is. All right, here's the bonus I promised you at the beginning, and this one genuinely doubled my yield in the final month of the season. In the last 4 weeks before harvest, when most gardeners stop paying attention, start adding a thin 2-inch layer of finished worm castings or aged compost to the very top of the tower, just on the soil surface around the base of the stems. Then, water it in gently. What this does is feed a final pulse of potassium and slow-release nutrients right when the plant is bulking up tubers in those final weeks. I picked this up from a small-scale market grower in Vermont who tracked his yields obsessively, and when I tested it on 2 identical towers, the one that got the late castings boost produced 31% more potatoes by weight. Half a coffee can of worm castings, applied 4 weeks before harvest. That's it. Free food, multiplied. So here's where we are. You've got a method that takes a $3 bag of sprouted kitchen potatoes and turns it into 100 pounds of food, using a tower that fits in the corner of any backyard or patio. That's real, practical, sustainable gardening, and it costs almost nothing. If you want to keep going down this scrap gardening path, I really do think you'll get a lot out of the 30-day kitchen scrap garden protocol. Inside, I cover 31 different regrowable crops, from celery and lettuce bottoms to ginger root, garlic cloves, and green onions. There's a complete $10 starter kit guide, so you don't waste money on equipment you don't need, a full zero-waste kitchen strategy section, and a troubleshooting chapter for every common problem I've ever seen come up. It's 171 pages of practical, tested information for $17. Just scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description to head over to backyardbuddybooks.com. I think you'll really enjoy it. So that's how a $3 bag of sprouted potatoes becomes 100 pounds of free food. If you try this method this year, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Tell me your zone, tell me your variety, and tell me your harvest weight. Until next time, take care of your soil, and your soil will take care of you.